Welcome to Blacklight on Sports. My name is Charles Hallman, and this is Dr. Mitchell McDonald. Tonight we have Kiara Buford. She is the Director of Alumni Relations at the University of Minnesota, where she went to school. Um, and she also has history behind her because I think she's the first person in a long time to win a state championship as a player and then came back and coached a state championship team,
Mm.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Gary, we wanted you on there for instance, we want you to have just talk about your new position because you haven't been there that long, but just to talk about things that's going on in college sports. Like we were saying, it's exploding and changing almost every day. So, but first of all, talk about your position after you. You haven't been there that long, but tell us about what that position means.
Yeah. So my title is Director of Alumni Relations and NIL. So it's kind of a unique position. I took over for Quincy Lewis, who is a Hall of Famer, Gopher men's basketball player. And we kept in touch when I was working in education and just everything that he was doing at the U. But really trying to get back, working in education, want to get back in sports. I've always done sports. I've always done both. So the opportunity when he, took the job at the Utah Jazz doing alumni relations opened up an opportunity. So I jumped on it right away. Took a while for the hiring process, but just ever since I've been in the seat from November, I just think it's been rocking and rolling because with NIL, it changes drastically and dramatically every other day. But the other part of my duties is just overseeing the M Club. So just connecting with our alumni, making sure that we're communicating, open communication, sharing news, celebrating each other, just working on that network, that family, that Gopher family. So that part's been really fun. Doing events, doing the 50th pin ceremony when we letter our 50th anniversary for your letter winner award, and even working on the Hall of Fame is what I'm kind of doing now. So that's been interesting and fun. Connecting with people that used to play, the greats. I've
Hmm.
learned so much. Just broadening my scope outside of just basketball is another thing that's been super interesting for me. Um, but I think the best part is connecting with athletes, right? And kind of making those two worlds mesh together. The letter awards, the Hall of Fame, setting events and celebrating our alumni and bringing them back on campus to share whether it's their career, their personal lives, or transition from pro sports, and then bringing that to our immediate athletes. So the NIL part of my job focuses on the internal piece of working directly with our athletes on their brand, so their personal brand, what they value, what's important to them, what they want to represent,
Hmm.
what things they need to look out for, navigating the new landscape, dealing with social media, learning how to present themselves on social media, making sure that that world meshes well. I always say being a student athlete hasn't changed much. If anything, it's gotten more demanding. So just making sure that they can balance that. If you're going into it focused on just NIL,
Hmm.
you're missing a whole lot of other
Yeah.
things when it comes to being a student athlete. That's super important. And so just making sure that we're supporting them in the best way. So I've been excited to be back. Like I said, I think it's been fun. Definitely a lot of work, but I think I'm built for it. So it's just been exciting, and I'm glad to be on the front end of a new transition for college sports.
Now you've been as a former student athlete. When you played, there was always you had to juggle things. You had to juggle
Hmm.
schoolwork, juggle practice, things like that. But now you add this piece to what a student athlete had to go through today. Is it helpful because you've gone through that experience and at the same school to share with these players of the day, the importance of making the right choices, doing the things you have to do, or has it be more challenging? You got to bring an agent in there or bring a lawyer in there so they can figure out what they have to do in terms of making sure that they stay on top of things and don't break the rules as they
Hmm.
out there.
I think it's a combination of both. Me being a former athlete fuels my passion, and it does give insight. I talk to athletes all the time because not everybody that works at the university or even in athletics was a former collegiate athlete. And they will tell you it does make a difference, just sharing those experiences and being able to relate, even though a lot of it does look different than what it looked 10, 15 years ago. And then I think the other resources are important too. Being a person that's able to point them in the right direction when it comes to certain things. When I'm talking about NIL, I can talk about a lot of things. We can talk about the branding, but when we get into some of the logistics of reviewing your contracts and talking about taxes, like I can tell you the basics, but I also have people and resources that I'm directing our athletes to just to make sure that they're set up and have all the tools that they need to be successful.
We asked you to come on because we wanted you to give our viewers and listeners a Cliff Notes version of what NIL is, because we
Hmm.
know it changes every 2 minutes, seem like, but what it is and how that impacts college sports today for the positive and for the negative in some respects.
Hmm. So NIL is your name, your image, and your likeness. And as it's new to college sports in the aspect that college athletes can get paid and make money and do endorsement deals, name, image, and likeness has been around for a while. You know, you see it in professional sports. I think too, as a female basketball player, when I was playing and looking at what my trajectory looked like, whether it was going overseas, we kind of banked on sponsorships and endorsements and making extra money because our salaries weren't as big. So we kind of looked forward to that. However, not being able to capitalize on that when I was in college, it takes time, so when you're done with sports, you kind of feel like you're starting over and you're kind of starting from scratch and trying to build again. And so I'm really, really passionate. Even before I got back at the I do leadership academies, and I speak with sports groups and teams just about all of this stuff, the off the court stuff, the transition stuff, because I feel like I've been got so much insight from my experience. And so just making sure that I can kind of meet them where they're at. Um, and like you said, it's always changing and evolving. So it looks different, and it depends on, who I'm talking to, what sports they play. But just being that sounding board, I think it's super crucial with everything that's going on in sports. But and I think the hard part is there's two sides of NIL. You have the NIL where you're a super good player, you're successful, your name is worth some money, people want to pay to either
Hmm.
have you show up and do an endorsement, get involved in your community. Those are the deals that we try to push, right? Yes, and we have a collective as well to make sure that we can stay competitive, to make sure that we're giving our student athletes opportunities, and not just the huge names, but even some of the smaller names and those kids that can put in work or really get in the community and do that work, and use their image or their likeness as an athlete to do so. So not much different than what we've been doing. I think we have the capacity to do more. I think it helps a little bit when you can pay them for their time versus them doing it for free. Building relationships with brands and companies. Like if me and you are doing stuff together, we can build a relationship now, and I don't have to wait until I'm done with my sport to maybe have that relationship with a business. But again, I think the biggest thing you got to look out for is making sure you're protecting yourself. You hear a lot of big numbers and people selling dreams, and making sure you read your contracts and you know what you're being offered. You know what you're signing your rights away to, for how long, all those little things. Making smart decisions. And again, making sure that you're able to perform. I always tell you, want to make money, focus on being the best athlete you can be. And then just really broadening that scope for them. And most athletes do a good job. Like they understand NIL, I think, better than the general public does sometimes, and they're more
Yeah.
realistic about it when it comes to it. And sometimes you got others that aren't, and they're trying to take advantage of their opportunities or the money, especially if you're looking at football or men's basketball. Like that looks different. And even women's basketball pushing in there, volleyball is trying to push into that landscape of what it looks like for NIL for women. The lawsuits and just the house settlements, we're still waiting for that to kind of shake out. And it's really a lot of, I was like, I get to wake up in the morning though and just read NIL news, which is kind of a good change of pace. But seeing what other people are doing, what they're thinking of, what they're talking about, it's just a whole new world.
Well, going into the job, when you got the job,
Hmm.
going into it, is it what you thought it was? Usually when you go into a job, you kind of have a vision of what you think it's going to be like. You think it's going to be, how, has your vision changed or has your perception changed?
I think it's exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
And I think the good part of the unknown of where NIL was at the time is
Hmm.
good, because then you don't have too many preconceived ideas of what you're expecting. So
Right.
I kind of went into, I knew I could kind of wrap my head around what I had to do for the M Club duties and the letter winners. And that was my number one priority right now.
Hmm.
As a letter winner, there's times where we didn't get communication, and I experienced that because I was on that side. So really making sure we're connecting. When it comes to the NIL part,
Hmm.
that part, kind of go in open, and I've been ready to kind of go with the flow. Jeremiah Carter's been awesome, just teaching me. I just feel like he's any questions I have, even when it's gray, even when it's vague and it doesn't make sense, him and his background with compliance, his background just knowing things with the NCAA and being on certain committees has just been helpful for the knowledge of it. So I feel well informed. And then there's a lot of things that we don't know yet. Now we're still figuring out. And so just being comfortable in that. I think some people get uncomfortable when you don't have that clear plan and you don't know what to expect or you don't know what's next. And it's a little bit of panic sometimes, but just staying calm and kind of working things through as they arise has worked for us so far.
Okay. What were you doing before you got this job?
Yep. So I played overseas when I was done playing at the U, and I was over in Poland. I came back. I was in between. I got pregnant with my daughter, so I was working customer service, and I was just like find a job, a real job for the time being, and then trying to explore like what I could see myself doing. I've always been a person that saw myself doing a lot of different things outside of basketball, but never really narrowing that down to something really specific. I went to school for public relations, so thinking that I was going to do some sort of broadcasting, but ended up doing customer service and then getting into education.
Okay.
And one of my old AAU coaches, I was looking for a job. Like I had looked for several jobs where I was kind of like, okay, whatever makes sense at this point, I'm ready to take it. I'm not going to be real specific. I'm going to stay open with my options. And that just opportunity opened up at Cooper High School. I worked in the dean's office and was going to be an assistant coach for Drew Woods, who was my former coach at the time. Yep. And he ended up coaching his sons for football. And so I took over the head coaching job at that time and wasn't expecting to, but I'm like, okay, sure, let's do it. And I loved it. I loved coaching, teaching, probably more than I expected to. I love the behavior part of my job, just connecting with not just athletes, but students and being able to make that connection. I feel like I was good at it because of sports and everything that I was able to do. So I stuck with that coaching, won the state championship. Now, when we won the championship, I actually worked at Fair School Crystal because Chris Hester was a principal at the time. She moved to Fair School Crystal when they added them into the Robbinsdale district. So I was over there. I had some 8th graders there too that I had playing for me at the time. So it worked. We were right down the street from Cooper. And then after 2 years there, Chris Hester moved to Roseville and took the head principal job at Roseville Area High School. So shortly after that, I go with her. We had built that relationship over time. And so now we're at our 3rd school together, and I was a behavior interventionist with Drew Woods again. It was us two and her, and kind of had a new team. So I spent 7 years there doing that and just doing administration work and doing behavior and coaching on the side. I eventually stopped coaching because my kids are getting bigger. They're playing sports, soccer, flag football, basketball. I did AAU for a little bit last year because it was a summer, a different season. I kind of wanted to feel it out and see if I could manage and maintain it, which was awesome. So I was with North Tartan, 16 EYBL. Had a great group of girls with them. But then, with my kids playing sports and balancing, when I took this new U of M job, I'm like, okay, I got to let something go. That's been my hard part of trying to do too many things at one time. So I'm not coaching. I still do some of the leadership stuff on the side, and I try to stay involved in the community as much as possible. But right now, I've had so much work at the U of M. I've had my head down kind of for a little bit, and I feel like I'm finally turning that corner of, being able to. I feel like I've maintained what I want to do and what we're supposed to be doing, but I have so many ideas and so many other things that I want to do to grow our connection. So I'm excited to work on some of that stuff.
When you coached at Cooper, you won the state championship, and your younger sister was on the team. How was that? I know you won 2 state championships in high school.
Yeah.
And then you go on and coach, and then you look up and you're coaching, and your sibling is right there. How did you, I'm pretty sure I'm asking a not so smart question, but what was that experience like, and how did that feel to guide them to not only to a state championship, but then a member of your family was on the team?
It's one of those things that now that I'm getting older and I'm reflecting on everything, like you're doing something that's kind of cool in the moment, but until you're really done and you're reflecting, you're like, oh, that was pretty awesome, So I don't think I realized how special it was in the moment as much as I wish I would have. Because I was grinding, we were grinding, and she was at Park Center first, and they actually, had won a state tournament there.
Yep.
But then had her struggles, but I was so focused on, building my team, coming back from overseas, and we're 10 years apart, so it was just a different experience. Like I felt like I was getting to know her even more than I had when we were young, because she was 8 years old when I left and went to the U of M,
Mm.
and I had been gone for a lot of that time. I would come home and watch her play a little bit. So, like, I knew her game,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew how I was going to plug her into my team. But,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, okay, I've had these girls for 3, 4 years. She's coming in junior. She had to play, because, the transfer rules, she had to play JV when she first came over,
Mm-hmm.
as a clearly could have been a starter. So just navigating that whole thing with her. But I'm glad we got to do it, because it was so special. And you don't get to do things like that very often. So to be
Right.
able to get that championship and experience that together was super special. And like now she's back and my daughter's playing, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
low key trying to recruit her to coach with me and coach my daughter. So we'll see. But no, it was an awesome experience.
Okay.
Now talk about your Gopher career.
Yes. I mean, I think obviously staying home. I went to the U right after the Lindsay Whalen, Janelle McCarville era, so there was a lot of hype built around the Gopher basketball at the time. I think also just kind of piggybacking off of the success that I had in high school. Our high school team had having the Division I players on that team, winning those back-to-back state tournaments at home, and then kind of being able to just drag that right into the University of Minnesota was a fun experience. And then challenging as well. My sophomore year, my freshman year, we went to the NCAA tournament and upset Notre Dame and went to the second round. But we really struggled my sophomore year. And honestly and selfishly, I hadn't lost a lot of basketball prior to that point. Like, I didn't know how to lose well. I
Mm-hmm.
never lost a conference game in high school. We went to state every year. We took third twice and won twice. And even prior to that, I'm thinking like AAU and traveling. Like, I've been on good teams, so I've been blessed and lucky, and even the coaches that I've played for. But sophomore year, learning how to lose a little bit, working on some mental toughness. But I really think the experience at the U helped prepare me to be a good coach. I think I learned a lot of what made me a good coach in college, and being able to reflect on my successful high school team and what it took to get there, being
Mm-hmm.
able to reflect on what things were hard and what you need to grow, and the stamina that it takes to play at a really high level, because it's not always about skill. I've watched a lot of amazing players be, just as good as I am, but not make it as far, because there's so many other components that come with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think in a nutshell, like, that was my experience. I loved representing home. I do wish I would have been a little bit more patient in the recruiting process. I committed super early as a sophomore at the time and was highly recruited. So just, I think visiting other places and seeing what other schools were about, it kind of, even if you stay home or whatever you choose to do, you have something to kind of compare your experience to. So sometimes you're not wondering like, oh, what if I would have went somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
But no, I learned a lot, and I think it's helped get me to where I am today. So again, super grateful that I had that experience and opportunity.
Now you went overseas.
Hmm.
Was the WNBA out was going at that time when you came out?
Yes.
Was you disappointed that you had to go overseas? That was a choice for you, as opposed to, because before, a generation before you, they had no choice but to go overseas. But now
Hmm.
you had a domestic league in play.
Hmm.
Was you disappointed that you didn't have an opportunity to play professionally at home as opposed to going overseas and playing?
Yes and no. I feel like, again, I think it's when you get older, your perspective of time changes. And when I was playing then, I had felt like, oh, I've been playing for 20 years, and I really wish I would have played a little bit longer. But again, I think I was anxious to do other things and try other things, and your body gets tired. And especially at the U at that time, I was our defensive player of the year. I was our team MVP my last 2 years. And so my load was heavy, and I had a bothering, nagging foot injury that the only solution to fixing it was to rest it. And I'm like, well, I'm not resting anytime soon. But I was literally getting a shot at the end of my senior year just to play in the games for pain tolerance. So I did have to make a tough decision after, the draft was over. And that's the thing about the WNBA, especially then. But you get that the 38 girls that get drafted, and you go look at the numbers of how many actually make a team,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at like 8.
Yes.
And then you might get 13 on a roster. I think that was the numbers, and that was not even just 10 years ago. I'm talking like, you look at last year and the year before,
Yep.
go look and see how many of those girls actually make a team. It's hard. And so I was set to go to the Lynx training camp, and they didn't have any roster spots was the reality. I do wish maybe I should have pushed myself just to go, just to have had that experience for my overseas resume. Would have been smart. But at that time, Maya Moore was there. They had the number 4 pick from Notre Dame at the time, and there was no room for me to make a team. So I rested my foot injury, went to the combine, and then found my agent, Charles Gamble, at the time, and loved him. Uh, Kind of set everything up and put myself out there for overseas opportunities and was successful just in that journey. So I was excited about that, just being out, traveling, continuing to play, even though it wasn't in the WNBA. And at that time, obviously thinking if I go and do my thing, I can try to come back and get into the WNBA. I think me coming back and having kids and coaching and getting, sidetracked made that outcome different, where I had to make some different choices. But that was my mindset going into it. But to my advantage, at that time, everybody that plays in WNBA plays overseas for the most part. And I'm interested to see what those numbers look like now that we do have, just a bigger market for it here. But when I was in Poland, we had Neka Gumike was in my league, and she was a rookie of the year for the WNBA that year. Tina Charles was in my league, and she was the WNBA MVP that year. Sydney Colson, who plays for the Aces right now, she was our point guard on my team. And we had another American, Bree, that went to USC and played a little bit in the league as well. And then we had a post player that we picked up after a couple months. So really good talent. It was competitive. Like I felt like I was playing at a high level. Like I love that experience. I got to guard Elena Beard in one game. And, they don't know who I am, but in my head, I'm like, ooh, I'm guarding Elena Beard, So, I love that part of it. I love just exploring a different culture, reflecting on how we live in America. So I think that was helpful for my experience. And again, I think even for coaching too, I picked up different things and different styles of just how they do things differently over there. So that was a great experience. But yes, ultimately, I wish I could have squeezed in the league a little bit somewhere along the journey.
Was it a big adjustment for you or a small adjustment for you? Not just playing overseas, but living overseas. Because I don't know if was that the first time you ever left the States. Because in America we do a whole lot of things differently than elsewhere, and sometimes people overseas look at Americans differently than we was. So talk about just that whole experience besides the playing part.
Right. I think, again, going into it super open-minded. I did have some teammates, that I knew that had played in places in Greece. And so I always checked in with them, just trying to get an idea, but really trying to be open. But yes, it was hard. I stayed home for college. So I remember sitting on the steps before I'm leaving, like, okay, I'm really leaving. And it's just you over there, and the time is different. So when you're awake isn't even the time that everybody else is awake. It took me a little bit to get my internet started. I had to hang dry my clothes, it washes, and I couldn't, the water that's coming out of the faucet, like I'm not washing my face with it. So there's a lot of little things that you learn. I had a headache my first trip to the grocery store. I thought like I was going to walk in there and see things and just know what they were based on how they looked. And that's when you're looking at a jar and it looks like it could be jelly, but you're really not sure, So all those little things. I remember trying to buy a hamburger, or they don't eat a lot of red meat over there. We ate a lot of chicken and really good potatoes. The food was good. Not eating processed food was an adjustment. I was a terrible eater. I ate a lot of junk. Learning how to cook stuff from scratch. You just don't have those options. We had a food market downstairs. It was all fresh stuff that was super cheap. And I like the values, like very family oriented. They don't work, we work a lot here. We're all about, we want to be bigger, faster, stronger. We want to make more money. And we kind of put that ahead of other things sometimes. So just to see everybody kind of just slow down a little bit and see how they do school and how they do college and how they take care of their families. I think that was interesting for me. How we do brands here, like the advertising here compared to in other places is just different. What we value and what we wear is different. So that part I think was super insightful. And to hear, I'd always ask them what they thought about. They know about our politics. They know more stuff about some of the stuff we got going on over here than we do sometimes. And so that's interesting. And then, I made my coach Rice Krispie bars for the first time. They don't have like marshmallows over there in the store. And he just thought it was amazing. He told me I was going to be a wonderful wife one day. I was like, if only he knew the ingredients, Rice Krispies that he's eating, But yeah, just a great experience. And I learned a lot. And being able to play basketball, I know we were talking about off the court stuff, but my coach didn't speak English. So I taught myself how to drive a stick shift. just the little experiences.
Now, when you were in high school, I know your first 2 years you guys took third.
Mm-hmm.
You won when you were a junior, and this is what I remember. You can tell me if anything was different, but when you came back for your senior year, there was a lot of hoopla because Angel Robinson was gone,
Mm-hmm.
and because Angel Robinson played a major role in breathing life into the team. You guys had a real good team, but everybody was talking about, well, they're not gonna repeat because Angel was gone,
Mm-hmm.
and then you all struggled a little bit in the beginning. And I remember, and this is what I remember, and I want you to talk a little bit about that your senior year. I remember the Twin City game.
Mm-hmm.
You lost to South,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's when everybody was, okay, all right, here was the lay of the land. Well, we know who's going to win the state tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just so happened you guys met them in the championship game and you won. Talk about that experience, because it looked like to me, if you're looking from the outside, that you all really kind of like came together as a team, and
Mm-hmm.
as time went on, and I just thought it was for me, I just thought it was a fascinating season,
Mm-hmm.
fascinating close
Mm-hmm.
to the season, because that's all I heard was Angel was gone, Angel was gone, Angel was gone.
Yeah.
So what was that like, and what did you learn from that?
As much as those losses to South, because we lost to them more than once that year,
Yes.
not just the Twin
Yes.
City game.
Yes.
We needed that. And I honestly, like, if we wouldn't have lost those, I don't know if we would have won that state championship.
Mm-hmm.
Again, playing and being successful and not losing a lot,
Mm-hmm.
having a really good team, you had a really good point guard. And Angel, she's one of those people that naturally gave you confidence. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you're out there with her, you feel like you can play against anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think losing earlier in the season,
Mm-hmm.
just, it gives you a different mindset. And so we knew, and I knew, and I had nothing to lose. Like, this is my last year. I
Mm-hmm.
got to give it all I got. But we were a really good team still. We had
Yes.
De'Ara Taylor. We still had Georgie
Yes.
Jones.
Yep.
And then I think, I give so much credit to Sienna West
Yes.
that year. She wasn't one of our main scorers,
Mm-hmm.
but she played her role to a T. And she didn't play her role the way she did that game. Her assignment was to guard Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
and she face guarded her the entire game. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all those little things that mattered. And I feel like that last one was more sweet for me.
Yeah.
The undefeated season was amazing, but
Mm-hmm.
like, that one took work. That one took effort.
Yeah.
And again, we didn't go into that one thinking, oh, we got this. We're going to for sure win. Like,
Mm-hmm.
South was an amazing team. Like,
Yes.
we knew we had to bring our A game. They had our number that year. So.
Yeah. Yeah. They did.
Yep.
Yeah. I just thought that was just I liked that season better than the other one, just because of what y'all had to overcome. Because
I miss those games too. I look at the pictures now and the way that, we played at South that one year, and they had to stop. We couldn't start the game because it was a fire code because we had
Yep.
too many people in gym.
Yep.
And all the bleachers were filled. The stairs to the bleachers were filled.
Yep. I remember.
And I remember I had to kick some people out. My mom almost didn't come in the game. Somebody, I could see him like letting her in because she's always late. She came at the last minute. But I just remember like the door, how you see it over there, it has a little window in the door. People that were on the outside were watching through the little glass window, and just to think about, what that meant for inner city girls basketball at that time was fun. And again, one of those experiences that I look back at now differently than I did when I was in it. So.
Oh yeah, it's a lot different. One other thing that I'm pretty sure people don't know, your mom was a real good basketball player, and played for Highland Park, and was on a team that lost the state championship game to St. Louis Park.
Mm-hmm.
And just curious of how she felt as her daughters were winning championships, and was wondering how she felt about the accomplishments that you all made, knowing what she went through when she was in high school.
First, it was hard. Thankfully, she let me go to Central. I'll start there.
Yeah,
going to Highland,
yeah.
Central and Highland, like that.
That's true. That's true.
She's like, oh, I gotta let you go to Central. I'm a Highland girl. So, but yeah, I played with the girls that I went to Central with for a while. So went to Central, And I think that my mom learned a lot from her experience. You know, not only when she was at Highland playing with the great players she got to play with in the Suggs and those,
Mm-hmm.
but going to college, and she only did that 1 year and then stopping. So I think she also had some regrets with how,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she could have took advantage of her career. And
Mm-hmm.
thinking of it at the time, like, you know, basketball was different then. She didn't have the WNBA to look up
Yes.
to growing up. So you really loved basketball to be playing it. And maybe it was for her being 6 feet, you know, at the time. It
Mm-hmm.
was kind of default for her. But that just helped kind of groom me into sports. I grew up watching her play in the women's league, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when I was little. She was right there the whole time. She assistant coached all my youth teams. So I think she was always good inspiration for me as a female basketball player. Like that's who I looked up to.
Okay. All right.
Here you're a black woman in a leadership role in college.
Hmm.
And in fact, and Jeremiah, both of you are two people of color in a high profile position in athletic administration. But we know across the board, it's not a lot of people that look like us in those roles.
Hmm.
Talk about just the importance of you being in the role you're in today, but that young black girls can see you in that role and could possibly see maybe that's something they could aspire to if they they don't play basketball, their athletic career ends, they can do something else
Hmm.
besides just saying, "Well, I can't play sports, I just go
Hmm.
where else."
Yeah, I think that's my purpose, honestly. Like from working in education and helping mentor those that didn't play sports and using some of the tools that I use with the structure that I had from sports and the coaches that I've had and bringing that to everybody. And what's been fun is just helping people navigate their journey, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be sports, but just you finding your passion and what you're good at and how that applies to life and what steps does it take to get there. And I've had people like that do that for me in my life. And when you see the impact that that makes, you get really passionate about doing that for other people. And so I think with everything that I do, every job that I have, like I take pride in that. You know, I'm the first woman to be in the position that I'm at the University of Minnesota. Definitely the first Black woman, obviously. Trying to make that space more inclusive. I think we have work to do just even around some of our student athletes. And I think about my time there and the population of athletes that were there when I was there, the football players, the basketball players. And when I'm doing a lot of alumni events, I don't see a lot of people that always look like me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they were there, you know what I'm saying? So making sure that that community is tight. And what I realized is we got all these little pockets of alumni communities and they kind of stick together. And so I'm trying to, you know, just kind of break down barriers and get connected and kind of re-engage them with the university because it is important and they do need to see it. And the current student athletes that of color that play at the U need that community and they need to see and connect. You know, I have a football player right now, he's interested in real estate and they're like, do you know any real estate people of color? Yes, I got about 5 Black men that do real estate that I'm going to connect you with. You know, those things are important because you only play sports for so long and life is
Mm-hmm.
life, you know, and I'm really, really passionate about making sure that we make that part as easy as possible, you know,
Mhm.
set people up, um, opportunities, being able to see what opportunities are. Sometimes, you know, kids don't even know what jobs are available to them. You know, they might want to be that football, that basketball player. They see that on TV. What else? What else can you do? And if you're not playing that sport, there's so many ways to get involved in sports and work in sports and jobs that
Mm-hmm.
you've never even thought of before. You know, so just giving them that insight and inspiration to do whatever it is that they want to do.
We talked about as of July 1st, Big Ten became a super conference in terms of expansion, its media deal with the SEC.
Mm.
Um, where do you see college sport, the landscape, and how you fit into that as we move forward? Is it, navigating it uh, to a point where it will continue to be progressing or will
Mhm.
regress? You're dealing with some legal issues, not you, but the NCAA is dealing with some legal issues. Where the NCAA stands in all this, will they eventually going to have to just dissolve
Mhm.
because the control will be more in the athlete's hands as opposed to where it used to be? Just give us what you see. Have you
Mhm.
thought about it and how and where you see it maybe the next 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I think always trying to stay focused on what's best for the student athlete, what makes sense for them, number one. And then two, figuring out how that fits with the bigger picture of collegiate, and I wouldn't even say collegiate sports, but the university and the academics, because that's the tie right now from the NCAA to colleges. Um, and that looks different depending on what school you go to, depending on what conference you are in. I'm blessed to be in the Big Ten, I think, at this moment, going through these changes, because I do think being in the large conference, there's a lot of people that are very, very involved, and kind of figuring out what this landscape's going to look like that work within our conference. So I just feel like we get pretty good information for the most part of kind of what's expected to come. And I think you have the things that like NIL is not going to go anywhere at the moment. Athletes are going to be able to get paid. And then there's the unknowns. What does that literally look like? How does Title IX play into that? Are we getting into revenue sharing? And if the university is able to pay student athletes directly, what does that look like? What is your university willing to do? Because again, it affects your culture and the type of kids you get, and making sure you're still recruiting good kids that want to be there for the right reasons is still very important. So I think it's that mix, that good balance of the two, kind of knowing what to expect, navigating that, knowing the unknown, and then really just kind of helping pull everybody along. And again, I think that over time, things are going to sort themselves out. I like that a lot of stories and experiences have started to happen for the good and the bad, good deals and then things gone wrong, but you learn from those experiences, and maybe some things come up that you didn't think about. So, it's like being a student of the game. I think like when you're an athlete, you're always trying to learn and get better. And I see it the same way, for my position, for my job, is continue to learn, getting better. It helps me in life, I think, just to associate things. Like I always say, like for my job, I work it in seasons. You got your preseason. I'm in that right now. I'm prepping for the fall. I'm prepping for football. And then you're in that grind season where you're working. You got a little bit of your postseason where you're reflecting on what needs to be better. How can you improve? And you kind of do it over again. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Who are some of the people that have influenced you during your journey?
Definitely my mom. I think has always been, someone that's kind of kept high standards.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching videos when I was at my cabin this weekend when I was little, and I was doing crazy. I was like, y'all just let me do anything on here. But it was allowing me to be me and express myself, help my confidence and my leadership skills. It's cringe to look at it now, but it helped me grow. I would say some of my coaches, for sure. And I mean, and for the most part, besides my mom, my coaches were male. Until I got to college. Pam Borton was the first female coach that I had besides Drew's wife coached a little bit with us my first year playing for Triple Threat, Angie Woods.
Yeah.
Yep. I feel like I was going to say one other thing and I was forgetting part of your question. Just influencers. Yeah. Even I think of people like Leah B. Olson, who's my mentor at the U. She graduated in a similar field that I was interested in. She's helped me navigate my journey a lot, even coming back to the U and being a sounding board, like other successful Black women. Another person, this is random, but my elementary school principal, Dr. Fretwell, she was a Black woman. She was a doctor. Yep. Loved her. And our slogan, and I went to Benjamin Mays, was, what was it? Leadership, communication arts and leadership. And I ended up graduating in communication degree. I do leadership, like everything that I learned as that foundation in elementary school. I was MC, I was on the morning news. Everything that I learned under her guidance and kind of her philosophy really helped me be who I am today. And so I actually wrote her not long ago, just couldn't give her credit because you don't realize those things. But yeah, just really built that foundation of skills, and right in the city, I just appreciated that.
We always ask our guests to speak to our viewers and listeners, share them some nuggets of wisdom that they can take away. This is not just us just gabbing and talking, with just to, spotlight, but also educate and enlighten. So we give you that platform. You have anything that you like to share to our viewers and listeners?
Just really digging into your own journey and what that looks like for you. I think it's so easy just to compare yourself to what other people are doing, or, trying to find your way, whether our economy looks a lot different than it used to look. I always talk about, like, I always thought I needed a career in like that one job. but I've been working and doing so many things on the side. And so just really encouraging people to do a lot of things and to try a lot of things. Put yourself out there, network. I think relationships are super, super important. But just go on your own journey at your own pace. I think is super important, and your perspective changes over time. So what you think now, you're going to get to a point in your life where that might look a little bit different, and just being able to be flexible with that. But I'm really big on planning things out, writing things down, going back to it. I have these notebooks, and if I go back in almost everything I've ever written down, if I go back and read, like I've done it or I've accomplished that goal or in some sort, like I've never really written anything down and didn't meet that goal. Might have took some time. So I'm a big proponent of writing things down. And just working hard. I think work ethic is really important, especially nowadays. You have a lot of things that do things for you. So I think if you have a really good work ethic and you prioritize your time really well, um, I think that goes a long way for you nowadays. I tell my kids that all the time.
Okay.
Hey, Kiara, thank you for spending time with us. We know that you have a busy schedule, but we appreciate Mitch covered you as a player in high school. I covered you as a college player and kept track with you as much as I could. We appreciate you spending time with us. And this is Blacklight on Sports. My name is Charles Hallman. Dr. Mitchell McDonald, Kiara Buford as our guest, and we hope that you'll join us again. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.